Socialist dreams are meeting fiscal reality in New York because it turns out even something free, someone has to pay for it. Mayor Mamdani walking back on one of his main campaign promises, free buses. Well, not including that full plan in the city's budget proposal. Instead, his administration is pivoting to a much smaller, limited pilot program, but state lawmakers still skeptical about that idea. The blasphemy, Caroline. How dare he promise me free buses and we don't get it? Is there an uproar from everyone who assumed that free buses were coming? Or is this a good thing that he's meeting fiscal reality? Is it bad for socialism because then people realize that the campaign promises weren't true? How do you read that?
Or that he doesn't know math.
That too.
As Gen Z says, the math was never mathing. It did not add up. And I think there is some buyer's remorse from his base because they thought because I think they were, and the data does suggest that they're not totally thrilled with his performance so far. He's under-delivering on his economic promises. They support his idea to raise taxes on the wealthiest individuals, but the problem is Albany needs to consent to that, and the state legislature is probably not gonna because Kathy Hochul doesn't want her tax base running away. What they reject is the only idea that he does have at his disposal, which is to raise property taxes, because they know on everyone, because that's what happens. If you want to forward your massive grab bag, Mamdani, you're going to have to punitively treat everyone, and everyone is not thrilled with that.
Tie this in, Jerry, for me. You get socialism popular. I have a lot of liberal friends from law school. Mamdani fans love him. Tax the rich. People who make money are evil. But then compare that with polls that show that a lot of people think taxes are too high. Where's the disconnect? Because I don't want to be like disparaging, but to me, like that connection is simple. But there's a lot of people who don't make that. They don't like taxes, but they still want to tax the rich.
You're asking for logic where no logic is at work, I think. And if I could, I'd love to cite you a few of these stats from the Fox News poll, which is crazy interesting in terms of the people who are angry about high taxes. First of all, the top line is that 70% of us are really PO'd about high federal taxes as we come into tax season. And that's the highest ever. 2025, 59%, 2024, 64%. And it's the people, it's the groups that are angry that are so interesting in this poll. Voters with graduate degrees. Very liberal voters are angry more than ever before, up 24% year over year. Democratic men up 19%, moderates up 19%. So there's anger bubbling over with people who you'd be surprised to hear what they think about this. They're also saying, and you will think this is, maybe this will actually get you angry. You've been in such a good mood the whole show.
Okay, well, let's go.
I'm gonna buzzkill you.
We got 20 minutes.
What bothers people most in this poll about federal income taxes is that the wealthy are not paying enough.
Ooh, the fair share.
Well, there may be truth to that in some cases. There are people that skirt the system. I think people are upset with taxes not because they don't want to contribute, because they see the money not being spent properly.
Yes.
And the acceleration from 59 to 75 is not a function of I'm now paying more, my tax rate's higher. It's like I'm paying taxes and I'm watching all this fraud and I'm seeing all this waste. So if you're going to tax me, at least do something with the money. And that is what is, I think, infuriating more educated people, regardless of their party leanings. Take my money, do something with it.
Right, and that's the number two concern, is how government spends their money. Nobody's happy about that either. I think, Caroline, you're right about, it's tax time, so everybody's a fiscal conservative, I guess.
Until they don't get their stimmy checks in July, right? And then I'm all of a sudden a liberal again. Jackie, yesterday I was talking about the Texas Wall Street exchange, the Texas, what's it called? Stock exchange, sorry. Y'all Street, not Wall Street. And they divided the country into quadrants. No, Fox Business made it up. I stole it.
You should get a T-shirt. Yeah.
The Boom Belt, Texas to Florida, Northeast, Midwest, West. GDP contribution, annual growth rate, revenue. In the last 5 years on average, the Boom Belt is crushing it. Of all the quadrants, the 4 quadrants that I laid out. So to me, I guess maybe my worry is this sort of exasperates the divide between what we see is like a failing Northeast and a booming, Plains or Southwest region. And then I don't want to say civil war, but you sort of break those up enough, and then there's, I don't know, it makes me nervous. But is that good? Capital goes where it's treated best, and eventually people are going to just overcrowd the boom belt until the Northeast and California wake up? How does that work?
I'm not really sure, but I just know that the two sides, this is like Iran and the United States trying to negotiate right now. The two sides are very far apart. And sadly, for the folks that are left in the blue states that don't have the right policies for economic growth, the folks that are left are the ones that can't leave, that don't have the means to leave. And so they're going to suffer as a result of these politicians, whereas the rich ones were able to go to the belt that you're talking about from Texas to Florida. So ultimately, I think this plays out, has terribly negative consequences, but you end up seeing what capitalist states look like and then what socialist states look like. And just if we have 1 second for me to take buses for 500, because I just want to address this. We talked about unintended consequences before, and I love the CEO of the MTA, although I'm not a huge fan of the MTA, but I like what he had to say about this. He said, if a lot more people are riding the bus, are we going to need more buses? Are we going to need more bus drivers? He goes on to say, well, we need extra depots. What will the impact on the subway be, or subway fare revenue be if everyone moves to, or some people move to the bus, right? Those things need to be studied. And so they just highball and throw out these ideas, free buses for everybody, without, forget what it's going to cost, but forget how it's going to impact the whole system and what that's going to cost.
Maybe they'll do a $300 million feasibility study.
When you build a building or you're going to do some development, you do a traffic study, and I think this cash flow study is what you're asking. What's the collateral damage or consequences of all of it? Can we go back to your boom,
I want to too.
Boom versus whatever. In business, I think about capability and eliminating the waste if you don't bring a capability. And I think you're going to get people in certain states looking at other states saying, what are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing, whatever state it may be?
Yeah.
I don't want to say a state because I think they all bring something, but what are you bringing? And if you're not bringing something, then why do I have to disproportionately subsidize? I'm generating all this income, I'm generating all this portion of the GDP, and now I'm giving it to you. That's the Civil War discourse. It's the discourse.
But it's not a civil war.
Discourse.
And I certainly hope it doesn't become one. But you have to give kudos to what is really the South. It's Florida, it's Texas, it's North Carolina, it's South Carolina, it's Georgia. These states have planned this. They have worked very hard to get these businesses to come to their states. They deserve kudos because they're appealing to people like you.
They do, but somebody still needs to build cars in Michigan and build and have steel plants in other places where the people in Georgia don't want it by Savannah because it's too pretty by the beach.
Well, Savannah is one city,
I know, but there
friend.
still has to be a place for our country to have different industries and different functions being provided by them.
But everything's mobile. Everything's mobile. Even industry is mobile. I don't have a problem with that.
You're getting at something that I think is really interesting. It's this idea, and Trump is sort of playing with this idea with Mamdani right now, which is that if you destroy the city and you impose all these crazy budgets that don't work and whatever, don't come looking at me for federal funding. And that's where I think this ultimately goes. If you destroy your city or state, there should be no money left.
So that's what I was going to say is the demarcation line between blue and red state is blurred when it comes down to how none of the states really want accountability when it comes to their social programs. Federally funded, but the states administer them. That's a really misaligned incentive structure where the states accept the money from the feds and they don't care where it goes. Not my money. It's the federal taxpayers. And there are, with SNAP, okay, food stamps, there are 42 states that have refused to put chips on EBT cards, which would provide extra assurance that it's not going to improper recipients. 42 states, some of those are red. So just to say that,